Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Get Some Z's recorded version of our wellness workshops. My name is Yahira Garcia, and I'm going to be presenting you with some information regarding sleep. Um, we'll be asking you a few questions regarding like your own habits, your own routines regarding sleep. So I just want you to have that in mind as you proceed through the rest of this workshop. Now, how much sleep is enough? Well, according to the National Sleep Foundation, they recommend that anywhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep is appropriate for adults, 18 to 64. It's important to keep in mind that this is an average, and some folks, feel better with more. Some people with less. As an example, I tend to do really good with sleep if I at least get 7 hours of sleep. And the best way to tell if you're not getting enough sleep is to kind of check in with yourself to see how you're feeling physically, emotionally, and mentally. I know that maybe when I tend to be feeling a little more irritable than usual, I tend to fall back on the basics of my routine of just like, am I hydrated? Am I eating well? Am I sleeping well? And, that's where I start in terms of like, okay, what can I do to improve maybe my like stress and anxiety that may be affecting, the basics to, my health, one of which is sleep. Now, we're going to move on and talk about what will happen if you don't really routinely get enough sleep. Before we go on, I want you to kind of think about this question. It's a true or false question. If you don't get a lot of sleep during the week, you can just catch up on the weekend. I'm not going to tell you the answer right now, but I want you to think about this idea as we go on to the next few slides. So, what happens when we don't get enough sleep? Sleep is important. I don't think I, need to reiterate that very much. We know that sleep is important because, from an evolutionary standpoint, why else would we, lie unaware at night from, well, not lie awake, lie asleep at night, kind of helpless when predators are the most active. We like kind of put ourselves in danger during a very vulnerable time because it's that important to us. In any case, whatever is going on at the time must be, pretty important. And keeping with this logic in mind, our body doesn't like it when we deprive it of sleep. For the purpose of this presentation, I'll be talking about partial sleep deprivation, which is defined as, a reduction in sleep from a person's like baseline total sleep time. So, for example, my baseline of appropriate amount of sleep is 7 to 8 hours. So, anything less than 7 hours for me would be considered partial sleep deprivation. And lack of sleep can, affect our metabolism, our cognition and mood, and our immune system, kind of things that I mentioned in a couple of slides before. We're going to be focusing on our sleep and our metabolism right now. In partial sleep deprivation, our metabolism is regulated by a flurry of hormones working in just wonderful, beautiful harmony. And the physiology of our metabolism is beautiful, elegant, but very complex. And because of these complexities, there are a lot of steps, such as specific hormones interacting, hormones being released to specific stimuli, and like things like eating, that anything can kind of go wrong. And partial sleep deprivation has shown to be one of the things that can disrupt this beautiful but complex process. Our first point is of partial sleep deprivation impacting us is our metabolism rate changes, and more specifically it slows down. And this means, that when we eat, the hormones released aren't sufficient for us to break down the food into energy that we use. And this is kind of like the underlying principle of how type 2 diabetes works. In one study, for example, that I read, it showed that after just 3 nights of partial sleep deprivation, the participants in the study were categorized as pre diabetic, which is just a very big, finding. And similarly, partial sleep deprivation has shown to alter the release of hormones that affect our appetite. And specifically, there's a greater release of hormones that make us feel hungry. and, less release of hormones that make us feel satiated. And this was, well illustrated in another study that I read, where researchers brought in young, healthy adults into their lab and induced, partial sleep deprivation. And they then let them choose whatever they wanted to eat. Subjects, had a wide variety of foods to choose from. They could choose from, junk food or healthy foods, or a variety that were presented to them. And participants who were more likely to, choose the junk foods with less nutrition content after they had, partial sleep deprivation induced on them. And, this isn't really, a surprising finding, at least for me, because can you by any chance like remember wanting to eat, some like salty, greasy junk food after a late night of studying? I know I've been there. Now, in terms of sleeping and our thinking, these two are obviously very, connected. Sleep affects our cognition, and cognition has to do with our ability to understand, our thoughts, our feelings, our senses. And this is, very important as a person, but, especially as a college student, because this affects, sleep affects our cognition, which can affect, our academics, our relationships, and our emotional and mental, well-being. The figure on the screen shows the performance of different cognitive function tests as a function of hours of sleep. So if we look at the upper left slide, graph in the orange, we can see that the test tested short-term memory. And there's actually no association here. The upper right in the pink shows reasoning skills, and the lower left in green verbal skills, and the lower right in the blue indigo color shows overall cognition performance. And figures B, C, and D show that cognitive performance peaks when you get around 7 to 8 hours of sleep, which, is around the time that the National Sleep Foundation average was the appropriate amount of sleep. And you may want to keep this in mind when you're like cramming for an exam, you know, like thinking that maybe not getting enough sleep or pulling on all-nighter to study might help you in the long time, but if you look at the tests, you could see that it doesn't really help you, in different kinds of cognitive domains if you don't get, the average amount of sleep that you need. And speaking of studying exams, studies show that memory consolidation happens during your REM sleep cycle, which, happens later in the night. And so, for this reason, looking at these graphs and knowing that, memory consolidation happens, later into the night, it's really important for you to get a full night well rested, like night of sleep before an exam rather than cramming the night before. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that sleep is an important part of keeping our immune system in peak condition. But how exactly does this work? Where there's two main components to this. First is that sleep itself is known to be restorative. And how exactly it's restorative isn't really completely understood. Something we do is that, when people don't get enough sleep, they make less of these molecules called cytokines, I believe, which is the signal to the immune response. And the second component is that sleep um, plays a huge role when we actually end up getting sick. Usually, our body likes to defend or, stay at a specific body temperature. And when we get sick, like maybe we get a fever or something, our body will do things like sweating or shivering to try and get our body back to like a normal range. And when we're sick, our body temperature rises to help fight the infection, which again is like what sparks a fever. And when we're asleep, we also typically defend our body temperature, except when we're in REM sleep. So when people are sick, they will have very little REM sleep because the increase in body temperature during and REM sleep is such an important part of the immune response. So, kind of to summarize what I just said, sleep is an important component of preventing and getting sick and our recovery once we're already sick. Now, back to the question that I presented a few slides ago. What do you think the answer is? If you don't get enough sleep during the week, can you just catch up on the weekend? What did you say? Well, the answer is false. I have a professor who is always saying, catching up on sleep is like catching up on your breathing. You can't. Sleep debt is cumulative. And, with that being said, I don't want anyone going home and panicking because they aren't getting enough sleep. We're pretty much still in the point in our lives where we can get good, high quality, deep sleep, which is why it's important for us to get into the habit of regularly sticking to like the 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Now, if maybe you're having trouble meeting that average like number, we're going to talk about some helpful strategies for getting some good sleep. But first, we're going to talk about sleep hygiene. Do you have any idea of what this may be? Yes, no, maybe so. Well, sleep hygiene refers to the healthy habits we develop to promote a good night's sleep. And healthy habits to maintain good hygiene are on the screen in front of you. Some healthy habits we can implement is, in terms of like caffeine, know your limits. Are you extra sensitive to caffeine? If you are, maybe try to limit the amount of caffeine consumption you have to just early in the morning so that you don't have caffeine later in the afternoon or evening that can impact you going to sleep, at a good time. Other good habits are, turning on your screen on light mode. I know a lot of different, applications, like software within your phone, computers, like web pages now let you change to like a dark mode, which, is helpful so that things aren't as bright and also, can go into a night mode to kind of restrict that blue light that's coming towards you. There is, having a sleep diary. If you don't really have an idea as to like how much sleep you get on a regular basis, keep a diary and track that. We're going to be talking about this a little later. Next is have a regular sleep schedule that you can stick with. Try to go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time. Another healthy habit to keep in mind is your environment. Like, you have a nice, peaceful environment to you that, helps you go to sleep. And then, using your bed to sleep. Don't do too much homework there. And we're going, to go through all these. Limiting your screen time. The basic principle of this is, that some of the light emitted from our phones can trick our brains into thinking it's daytime. And if you like to watch TV or read on your phone, try using, again, like the night mode on your feature to get, to reduce the amount of blue light coming towards you. Another option that I like to do other than spending time on my screen is, reading a little bit. Something light is preferable to me, so I tend to prefer something that's like enjoyable, maybe comedy based or nonfiction, maybe children's books. Harry Potter is a really good one to kind of take your mind off of a screen, your eyes off of a screen. You could also try journaling at the end if you know, don't want to look at a screen, or if you're also feeling like anxious or stressed. I tend to write down whenever I'm feeling stressed or anxious, so that I can collect my thoughts, be a little more at ease, and then just fall asleep knowing that they're like in another place other than just in my head. Back to caffeine, kind of like what I mentioned before. Everyone has different sensitivities regarding caffeine. It could be trial and error of like, hey, maybe I'm not too sensitive to caffeine. I can, drink caffeine up to, the evening and not be impacted. If you're not quite sure, it is recommended that you avoid drinking caffeine at least 6 hours before your bedtime so that it doesn't impede your sleep. Next is, creating a comforting sleep environment. Something you might want to think about is the temperature in your room. Do you like things to be like comfortable and warm? Do you like it being cooler so you can snuggle up a little more? I'm personally more of like, I need my bedroom environment to be on the cooler side. Light. Are you easily distracted by light? Is it difficult for you to go to sleep? Or do you need a night light, for example, to be able to fall asleep? This is something that could be helpful. Sounds. Do you tend to live in like a noisy environment? If you do, maybe try investing in earplugs, or maybe, an air purifier or a white noise machine to kind of block out some of the external sounds that could disrupt your sleep. There's other, environmental um, factors to keep in mind, like your ambiance. Do you like where you're sleeping? And like also the smell. Like, is this potentially something that triggers you or prevents you from getting, an adequate amount of sleep? And kind of continuing with the environment factor is just like, is your bed stress free? The idea here is that you try to have sleep associated with your bed. And this is, when you get in your bed, your body doesn't associate it with feeling stress with homework or studying. So a simple idea such as like not doing your homework or not taking meetings or, stressful things from your bed can make a difference. I personally try to avoid that. I try to take in any homework at all, any like work related things, assignments, meetings, phone calls from my bedroom so that it's a safe space where I can just fall asleep. And next is, a sleep schedule, kind of like what I mentioned before. If you're having trouble kind of targeting, do I have trouble sleeping? What are some factors that are contributing to me not getting, the recommended amount of sleep? Well, try a sleep diary. This is from the National Sleep Foundation, and it's pretty helpful because it helps you log, whether you napped, whether you had caffeine, your alcohol intake, your exercise, just different factors that may be affecting your sleep during the night. This is really helpful to kind of start pinpointing like things that may be contributing to you not getting enough sleep. And if you still can't get enough sleep, go talk to your doctor and tell them about you not being able to sleep properly. There are different, sleep disorders that could be attributed to, your trouble sleeping. Insomnia is one of them, and this is characterized by, reoccurring difficulty to fall or to remain asleep, despite, your motivation or means to do so. There's also, sleep apnea, and this is a really common sleep-related breathing disorder that occurs due to, blocking of the upper airway. And people with this condition often wake up choking or gasping for air, and heavy snoring is another common symptom. So if if any of these sound familiar to you, like go talk to a doctor or a medical professional and tell them about your struggles, because there's types of therapy or you know yes, strategies that you could use that will um, help treat these issues. And lastly, I just wanted to remind you of some services that are available to you all as registered students at the University of Oregon through University Counseling Services. We offer consultations. If you are, need help with a student of concern or want to consult about a certain issue. We have short-term individual teletherapy for students. We also have group therapy. Um, Folks at the center also, offer community and campus referrals. There's also education prevention and outreach, which is what you're currently participating in by watching this workshop. We also have the Collegiate Recovery Center available to students as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to call us at 541-346-3227. After all hours, this phone number is an after hours support crisis line. So someone will always be around to help you out. You can also visit us on our website at counseling.uoregon.edu. And if you're interested in knowing where we're physically located, we're at the University Health Counseling Testing Center on the second floor, right across the street from Oregon Hall. So I hope you learned a little something today, and thank you for watching.